then you look to see, all right, what are my signs between them? And you may actually end up subtracting in the end if the signs are opposite. Okay, well what if we have something like 4 plus a negative 4? Okay, well what do we get there? 0. And 0 has no sign. Because why? Well, there's only one 0 on the number line. Okay, so I suppose you could say that 0 is positive, but 0 is really neutral. The other signs, they're going to have their opposites, but 0 is the only number that does not have an opposite. Okay? So you're never going to see a negative 0. Alright? Now, you may see something like, for example, well, I don't want to get too far ahead, but I'll get to, when we get to that point, then I'll show you. When you get into like multiplication, division with 0 in it, you know, it looks like there's a sign in there, but it's just 0. Okay? Okay, so let's say we have, with problems 23 through 38. If we have a negative 17 plus a negative 3 plus 29. Now with integers especially, it's extremely important that you're going from left to right. Remember the order of operations where we had our mnemonic device, and we call it PEMDAS. You get down to addition and subtraction, and we said that they're equal. You have to look at going from left to right. Well, with integers, it's extremely important because if you're going the other way, now if you're going the other way, it kind of looks like people will look at this as a positive 3 instead of a negative 3. The sign is always, the sign that attached to the number is always before the number. Okay? It's always to the left of the number. The sign is always to the left of the number. That's why you have to go from left to right. So what we want to do here is we want to take two numbers at a time. Negative 17 and a negative 3. Are we adding or subtracting here? We're adding negatives, right? So negative 17 and negative 3 is going to give us a negative 20. And then plus 29. Now we're doing what? Adding or subtracting? Now we're subtracting. We get a positive 9. So the thing that you have to watch with adding and subtracting integers is that one step you may be adding negatives, and another step you may be subtracting. And the trap that students get into is they get into, if there's several steps, they'll get into like subtract, 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 add, and they'll get into that mindset, subtract, subtract, and then instead of adding, they continue to subtract because they're kind of thinking subtraction. But you have to, every step is different, and you have to look at each step separately as far as what operation are you doing in that step. And so that's why I always tell students to take that extra second to think about what's going on in that particular step. Okay, here we have 11 plus a negative 22, and then close parentheses plus 4 plus a negative 5. Now remember in our order of operations, we've said in the past there's parentheses and exponents and multiplication and division going from left to right, and addition and subtraction going from left to right. parentheses, when we look at it in this way, we really mean what? Simplify within the parentheses. But here, there's nothing to simplify in the parentheses, right? So the function that this parentheses has is to separate the plus from the minus. It just makes it easier to see when you're working through the problem. So you don't look at this as the highest order of operation because it's already simplified. You just look at it, in this case, you're just going from left to right. So now we're going to take a look at 11 and negative 22, and that's going to give us a what? A negative 11, right, plus 4, plus a negative 5. And yeah, and then you look at the next one, and that's going to be a positive or negative 7? A negative 7 plus a negative 5. Okay, so the first step we did what operation? Add or subtract? Subtract. Second step, did we add or subtract? Subtract. Third step, we're adding. See what I mean about being careful, because you don't want to, students a lot of times will get into that kind of like a single way of thinking, and then they see something, but they're really thinking something else. So you got to watch that with addition and subtraction of integers. Okay, so now this last step, what are we doing? Adding negatives, right? And that's going to give us a what? Negative 12. Alright. So everybody in here can add or subtract integers. You've got to be very careful about making those silly little mistakes, those mental errors, because it's in these steps, especially when you start getting into multiplying and dividing and adding and subtracting, the multiple different steps, that you have to take that extra step, take extra second to think about what's going on. Yeah?
You know the mentor or tutor that I meet with?
Uh-huh.
She told me to take the parentheses, subtract them out, and then add them, so all the homework I did is wrong.
No, well, there's some people that what she did was she combined all the negatives together with negatives and all the positives together
She
with
skipped
positives.
through. So,
I'm not going to mark that wrong,
okay, good.
but there's good and bad ways of seeing that too. Now, the way I'm doing it in accordance with the order of operations.